All right, beautiful people, welcome back to Inherent Success Podcast, where this is your guide to self discovery. On here, we talk a little bit about business, self development, health, wellness, all the good stuff. And on this episode, I'm really excited because I have my lovely, beautiful friend, Candice Escobar.
Mhm.
Candice, welcome to the show. How are you
Thank
doing?
you. Thanks. I'm really well. Thank you. And I'm really, really excited to chat with you today and to get to share. So, yeah.
Yes, I'm excited as well. Candice is a really good friend of mine, and I actually met her at a workshop that I'm currently still going through, actually, a
Mhm.
leadership and emotional intelligence workshop, and she was one of the seniors there. And I
Mhm.
just like just her presence and her light and just how she was coaching people and just like even how she gave me feedback. I was like, oh, wow. So I loved it. And she's just a beautiful person. So yeah, I'm really excited to hear your story, Candice, and how everything started. Now let's take it way back to
Mm.
little Candice.
Okay, we're going there. All right.
Yes, we're going there. So share a little bit more about your background. Where are you from? How did you grow up? Like who was Candice before the Candice Escobar?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I'm actually from Texas, which is where I live now. I live about 30 minutes from the city that I was born in, which is San Antonio. And I was raised by my mom, and I had an older sister, and we had like a huge age gap. So, in some ways, I was kind of raised by her as well. And we moved around a lot, like through San Antonio. We lived in a bunch of different places. Once upon a time, we like kind of hopped, in and out of apartments and into this house where my mom and her like boyfriend at the time were raising us as kind of like a little Brady Bunch. And that just, it didn't work. And then I think not even a year after moving out of that home, because my mom was in the military, we ended up moving overseas. So I was 11, and the first time we left the state is the same time we like left the country and flew over the ocean. Um, so yeah, I love traveling now. It was really hard making all those moves as a kid. Obviously, it's always really hard being the new person in school and figuring out where you fit in and are you going to make friends. And one of the things that I guess I kind of used as a really, powerful coping mechanism is that I'm just not adverse to change. Like, because everything was always changing in my childhood, and there was just like a lot of uncertainty, not a lot of
Mm.
control. And in that change, just a lot of exposure to really cool things that kids my age wouldn't have gotten to do. So, with my mom being in the military and traveling, getting to see different parts of the world, experience other cultures, and yeah, just understand that there was so much more out there. And me as a person before that, gosh, I struggled. I struggled a lot just with there was a lot of like, abuse and just toxic relationship dynamic modeled in my home when I was a kid. And so I had really low self-esteem, really like no confidence really. It was hard to make friends, not just being the new kid at school, because I had to shift so much at every place that I didn't know who to be, if that makes sense. And the things that I felt like really made me me, like being creative and crafting and getting into music, and those were just not things that were really like celebrated in my home. And so I didn't feel free to express those parts of myself out in the world. And so I just grew up feeling really lonely a lot of the time and feeling kind of lost. Yeah.
I can relate to that a lot. And I think we've spoken over the phone a little bit about this, how you and I can relate. Our stories are a little similar as where I moved around a lot as a kid.
Yeah.
And I loved how you said that basically you can adapt to change so quickly just because that's how that was familiar to you. That's always been like, oh, this is my life.
Yeah,
This is it. Like that's how I
exactly.
that's how I was growing up. Oh, this is my life. Oh, another argument. Oh, this is my life, and
Hmm.
moving again. Oh, this is normal, just like not thinking anything of it.
Yeah.
So with the moving around, how did that impact you as a child, like really affected you, and how did you see that as you were as how did that project in your life as you were growing up?
You know what's wild is because about that, I love that question. What's wild is like the first thing that I think of about like how it impacted me is, we kind of have, I don't know if this is a thing for you, but I know this is a thing for me, and I've heard from other people where you have like a recurring dream, like your subconscious is really trying to work through something that is so deep that you have that dream over and over and over again. So one of my like nightmares that I used to always have in adolescence was kind of running around one of our apartment complexes and playing, and it was time to go home. Our rule was like streetlights are coming on, sun's going down, like you got to go home. And I knew, I was like, I have to get home, I have to get home, or my mom is going to be pissed, right? But in my
Mm.
dream, I either couldn't find like the building that we lived in, they all looked so similar, or I would get to the one that I thought was ours and like open the door, and the door would open to like this completely strange place. And so the thread in my subconscious and in my dreams was like, there's never home. Like, I'm never going to make it back. Like, I'm never going to find home. And that is one of the big impacts of like moving around so much and having all of that change was just like that lack of safety, that like not having, this is my home base, this is my tether, this is what I can always come back to. And it kind of just made it hard to even like sit still. So for me, being planted long enough for people to get to know me really well and have that intimacy has historically been very uncomfortable. Like to the point where I just get that itch. And, sure enough, I look at my calendar and I maybe have been somewhere like 3, 4 years and it's like, okay, I gotta go. It's too familiar. And I also recognize the ways that that's like not the healthiest. And it made me afraid to really try a lot of things or take a lot of the risks, and pursue the possibilities that were available to me once I was like a teen and a young adult and establishing like what I wanted to do in my life, because there was that sense of like, you know, I'm not going to make the right decision, or I'm going to make a decision and regret it, which really is just like this big fear of commitment, right? And I didn't even have an awareness around that until maybe 4 years ago, you know? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I had like a poof moment too. And I feel like we're soul sisters,
Yeah.
Candice, because
Yeah.
everything that you're saying, I'm like, oh my God, oh my
Ooh.
God. Ooh. I'm trying to control my face expressions. But it's so interesting that you say that, because I remember growing up, even now, like I'll have dreams of me being in different homes and I couldn't understand why, but like in the home, I'm always like running away. Like I'll try to
Mhm.
run away, or like I'll go in a home and I don't feel safe in that home and I'm closing the sliding door. You know how dreams are very vivid, and like I'm
Yes.
closing the sliding door, but like the sliding door is like wobbling and I'm just like, I'm
Oh,
trying to close this door.
yeah.
um it's very interesting that you said that about the subconscious and how it's
Mhm.
familiar. And this is all based in backed up by science
Mhm.
and psychologists and people that really know about this realm. But what I've been reading, I've been looking into a lot of like childhood trauma and
Mm.
learning more about that too.
Mhm.
And from the time that you're born all the way until like you're 10, and when you start hitting puberty, that's your programming,
Yeah.
the subconscious thinking.
Yeah.
So, however you grew up, whatever you absorbed at that time, that's your program until you hit puberty, because your prefrontal cortex develops once you hit the puberty stage, which is like 10
Mhm.
years old. They say 7, but it's like 7 to 10 years old. And
Yeah.
then that's where your conscious think, that's where you become conscious. Now, like that's very interesting, because that's where your familiar feelings are as you're growing up and as you're getting older. If it's something that it's not familiar, you think it's not safe, and like your brain is wired to protect you. So if it's not familiar, it's not safe, it's like, no, I'm gonna back up. And I remember too, when I was growing up, I always had this fear of like abandonment, and the
Mm-hmm.
fear of like losing friends, and the fear of like someone falling out of love with me, or all of these things. And I've worked on it. I've been working on it. It's getting a lot better.
Yeah.
um but it's very interesting how like those familiar feelings from when you're younger grows into the time that you're in adulthood. And I always say that's why I have so much compassion for people and empathy, because I just go back to, I'm like, maybe they weren't loved enough, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Mm.
going into your adolescence, and like even, even ending high school, like how was that experience for you?
Oh my gosh. I mean, that whole period of my life was like this huge fear of failure. And again, it was just constantly getting all this feedback like you can do this and this is available to you and you're so good at that. I mean, anything, like it could be modeling, it could be broadcast journalism, it could be freaking woodworking, I ran track, I played volleyball. Like there were so many avenues that I look back at now that it's like, gosh, if I had just like not been afraid to like pick one and know that I was allowed to change my mind, just because that wasn't the conversation at my house. Like, and this isn't, my poor me story. Like, I know there are other kids who were like leaps and bounds beyond where I was at that age and stage. But like, I didn't have the adult sit me down and say, this is what college is going to look like if you go this route. This is what this other thing is going to look like if you go this route. Here's how we create this. That was not a conversation in my house. I was raised by someone who was in survival mode most of the time. Right. And so, yeah, going through that, I just continued to carry that very low self-worth, interacting with people in ways that was like not for, my best interest for sure. And really sharing only this much of myself, just the parts of myself that people value at that age, but is like really less than, it's a small fraction of like who I actually am as a person. And it was just a lot of fear and paralysis. And I think it's funny, as I was just listening to this poet that talks about this, and she wrote a poem to women who didn't have safe mothers. And I absolutely don't want this conversation to turn into like a mom bashing moment. I can appreciate everything, like all of the good and beautiful and unsafe sometimes things that I got from my upbringing and my mom, and appreciate everything that she probably went through in her youth, that created that. But yeah, it's an interesting relationship. This poem was talking about this really interesting relationship between ambition and just doing enough to stay out of the grasp of like that unsafe environment that they felt with that parent. And so it was like, do I even really want to do this? Do I want to do this for me? Do I want to do this to like make her proud? Am I actually interested in this? And probably the answer to all of those questions was yes. But all I experienced at the time was this confusion that had me just choose like nothing. So anyway, eventually I just ended up making a series of really not great decisions that landed me at, my final, what felt like my end all be all option to get out of the house, which was joining the military and following in my mom's footsteps. So, yep, signed up at 19 years old. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. No, and at the end of the day, parenting is not easy. We
Hmm.
were not given a manual, that's for sure.
Right. No.
And it's not easy. And I give credit to all the parents out there, and it's
Hmm.
definitely not to bash parents or
Hmm.
moms or anything like that. It's just everyone growing up has had a different experience. And
Yeah.
even and it's not to say to like, oh, my life was worse than yours, or I did what, it can
Mm.
be like as little as like the emotional support, if there was a lack of emotional support, children need emotional support.
Yeah.
Because I've heard of cases where even the family was just like, very wealthy, or there was support, and the parents thought that that was their kind, like their way of supporting was like a loving way, but it was
Yeah.
more of like, I want more from you, like you better get good grades, you better get this.
Yeah.
There were so many different ways of showing love.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, our parents did the best that they could with what they had and what they knew.
For sure.
And especially that old generation, it's not like they can pop
Yeah.
up YouTube and listen to Jim Rohn on personal development,
Right.
it
Exactly.
was just it was very old generational, culture living. I mean, for example, like for me, like I'm Cuban and Spanish, so
Hmm.
the Latino world, Hispanics, like they're very stern, we don't talk about
Yes.
feelings, very
Yes.
like very hardcore, and like, no, forget your feelings, like you shouldn't do this. And it was just
Hmm.
more of like aggressive language and physically, instead of just like sitting down and talking about our feelings. If you talked about your
Totally.
feelings, you were crazy. uh, Literally,
Yes.
that's just how we were. That's how
Yeah.
it was growing up. So like you said, just having that safe space,
Hmm.
there was no safety. So it can be from like not the child not feeling safe, and that can be projected into their life, whatever they're putting themselves into, with their friendships, relationships, getting jobs, or just anything like that.
Hmm.
And then there are also children that are so consciously aware, that they make their better decisions, or they make their own decision. Like for example, my brother, my younger brother, he avoided all of that, and he was worked really hard, and he studied, and now he's a doctor. you
Wow.
know I had to
Yeah.
call him, like, how did you what's up, like, what did you do? No, but
Give me the
we're
cheat
very,
code.
very, give me the cheat code. No, but we're very proud of him. But no, I understand that 100%. And that's amazing that you joined the military. So how was your experience joining the military?
Ooh, that's a ride. Um, I was very like, if having this like conscious awareness and moving really intentionally in life is being, woke or whatever, I was dead asleep when I joined the military.
I know
And
that feeling.
right, like,
I've never
and
been in the
like,
military, but I know the feeling.
yeah, well, that's just the age and stage I was at, and it
Hmm.
was pretty common. It was just this very like small-minded, here's how I'm going to get out of home. Here's how I can like make the most money and be somewhat independent, right? Like that was the goal. And unfortunately, I mean, like there's so much good and there's so much not great about it. And so some of the greatness of my journey in the military is I was a linguist, I was an Arabic linguist. And so I got to learn so much about just yet another culture that I didn't have exposure to, and really work with some beautiful humans who were willing to teach us about that. And I got to learn a lot about what leadership is and what leadership isn't. And unfortunately, the majority of that was, at the expense of me being at the wrong end of not great leadership. Um,
Mm.
and so, yeah, it was also a time when I think the military, um, kind of it was very easy to see this pattern of taking these kids, these high school grads, these people who maybe like they're in the age to go to college and didn't really feel like college was for them, put them in this environment together where they're now being treated as although they are developed adults. And so we're all babies, basically, in my opinion, getting married and having families before 25, getting divorced by 26, and that it's very common. It's not everybody, but it's very common. And that was something that I for sure experienced in my personal life and being in the military. And then I ended up moving into a role that just many, many times I was coming to understand that I was not a good personality hire for the work that I was doing. Because that is a part of the intelligence community, and intelligence and counterterrorism is really full of like introverted people, and I had always really been extroverted, and it was just another space that I had to bounce around in and not really like didn't really feel like I fit. And I mean, I don't know where you stand spiritually, and I'm not going to preach by any means. And my experience of part of what happened for me is my soul just like went wild, like, and I became very physically ill. And I still have some physical challenges. And at the time, I really feel like my spirit was just telling me in all of the ways that it could, until I was ready to listen, that that wasn't where I belonged, and that wasn't where my gifts were being used,
Mm.
and that that wasn't where I even could feel on a regular basis fulfilled or like I had gifts to give. And so it got to the point where I was so sick that I ended up medically separating from the military. And that was it was in the middle of 2016. And so by that point, I was divorced. I had a kiddo under 2 and another one on the way, and had to figure out some stuff real quick.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel that so much.
Hmm.
Spiritually, that part when you said internally, like your soul screaming and telling you like you're not supposed to be here.
Hmm.
And that's our, of course, our intuition. To
Yeah.
me, yes, that's my soul. That was my soul speaking to me, but it's also, whatever, how your faith, however that looks
Yeah.
like for me, it's also God talking to
Yeah.
me like,
Absolutely.
what are you doing? Like you're not supposed to be here. And then life tests you in the most craziest ways, and
Hmm.
it puts you in the most uncomfortable positions to
Hmm.
basically just like force you out of there,
Yes. Pretty, that's
and
exactly what it was like. Yes.
yeah, and that's why it's rigged in your favor, because you're
Totally.
meant to be on another path. And there were a lot of times where I was really stubborn, because I'm the type of person that I don't like to quit. I'm just really stubborn. I'm just like, no, I'm gonna do this. I
Hmm.
remember, I mean, I still work on my full-time job, but I remember when I was just like heavy into my full-time job and heavy into my bodybuilding, I
Yeah.
thought that that was my identity. But in reality, like reevaluating and thinking about it, and I was just numbing myself with so much
Mm.
work, because I was avoiding the work that I actually was meant to do, my
Hmm.
purpose, my vision. And
Yes.
I got to the point where I was just like physically sick. I was so depressed.
Hmm.
It's a long story, but
Yeah.
it's interesting how like you're literally your soul, your intuition. A lot of times we don't listen to our intuition, and we just go,
Yeah.
go, go, go. And at the time when I'm making good money, really, really good money, I was just
Yes.
so addicted to the money. And I was just like, no, I'm working, I'm working. I was working almost 12 hours a day. There would be
Mm.
times that my son would come into my office and be like, Mom, it's dark outside. What are you doing? Like it's eight
Wow.
o'clock. So I feel that so much. And it, like I said, it's very interesting how like life just kind of like puts a fork on the road for you and tells you, hey, you're not meant to go this route, you're meant to go this way. This is your detour right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And how, motherhood is can be very challenging, especially when you are in the pursuit of finding yourself,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
especially as a young mother. And you and I, we're mothers. We know how that is. It's like
Hmm.
most times we're on their schedule. So
Yeah.
it can be challenging, but like in such a beautiful way. You
Hmm.
know. So becoming a mom, how old were you when you had your first child?
I had my first when I turned 28 right after he was born.
Okay, okay,
So,
okay.
yeah. So
Nice. Okay, so
he's
how
10 now.
Oh, that's nice. Okay, okay. Well, you look amazing for your age. So,
Thank you. That never gets
yes,
old, and
girl.
neither do I.
Yes. We're young. We're young.
Yeah.
Okay, so how was that feeling of being a mother? Was that something that you've always desired? Was that a surprise? Was it planned? Like, how did that impact your journey? becoming a
Yeah.
mother?
Oh my gosh. Just in like the best and coolest ways, honestly. I always knew that I wanted to be a mom. I would walk around as a kid with my Cabbage Patch and I would like make her legs longer so they would wrap around my hip.
Oh,
And I'd be like, come here, baby. So
I
I,
remember those.
yeah. It's like,
Yeah,
look, she's walking. But no, I
love
always
it.
wanted to be a mom. I was very clear about that. I didn't feel worthy of being a mom until I had like I had checked the boxes, like
Mm.
my job pays me really well and I'm a responsible adult and I have my car and my insurance, whatever BS, right, that I was believing at the time about what it meant to be a grown up. And I was like, okay, well, now I'm gonna have a baby. And so when I had my baby, it was gosh, just like it's such a catalyst. And that was right before several forks had been put in my road. And I think because I wanted to be a mom for so long and it was coming from this wounded place of like, at the time I was like, I'm gonna do this way better than my mom did,
Mm.
and so I attracted a partner to have kids with who like wasn't whole and healed and complete because I wasn't whole and healed and complete. And so all of that started to really come super apparent after baby boy came. And it's so funny because like it's the things that were always there, right? Like it didn't just start happening after the baby was born. And so I joke with my oldest because he has these massive, beautiful eyes. And he came out and his eyes were open and he was super calm and he was just taking it in and he wasn't crying. And like that was the day that my eyes opened, because there's just something so like eternally true about the wisdom of like nature. And that's just kind of like that my kiddo's essence, my biggest kiddo. And then the other thing that was happening was he was really sick. He wasn't sick, but he had a lot of like respiratory infections in his early months. And I had to go back to work when he was 8 weeks old and he would stay at home with his dad. And it was really hard. It was so hard to leave and go to work. And even when he was like going to daycare and continuing to have these infections to where he wouldn't eat all day. And so I would have to stay up all night and feed him and then go to work in the morning and have to ask another grown adult coworker, commander at my job for permission to stay home and take care of my baby who needs me was like it still gets me emotional. It's like the last thing on earth that I ever want to be doing. And I have so much appreciation and adoration for the parents who do that every day and who make that choice every day, whether that comes easy to them or not. For me, it wasn't my path. And it sucked.
Yeah.
So that was one of those things that was like, okay, I might actually have to make some decisions about the future because I never want to feel this way again. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very tough because, a lot of mothers, they have jobs and they have to leave their kids. I
Yeah.
remember my parents worked all the time and I was being taken care of from like everyone, literally all day, every day, Monday through Friday. Um, and that feeling, I think that's also where I got like that feeling of like abandonment too. And even though I knew my parents were working, but just that feeling of them leaving me all the time somewhere, it just is really hard. And at the end of the day, it's a hard decision. It's a sacrifice because
Yeah.
you got to do what you got to do, like it's
Totally.
when you're raising a family, you get to work, you get to go to work, you get to make the money, you get to pay the bills. So it is really hard. And with making the decision,
Hmm.
was this the moment where you decided to go down another career path? As far as like, when did you discover,
No.
because I know, yeah, that's what I'm getting to. So I know there are a lot of moments in our lives, like pivotal moments, right,
Hmm.
that leads us to our purpose.
Yeah.
and it can be something like a hardship or like a difficult challenge or anything that you went through. So what was that pivotal moment for you where you were like, this is my path and I'm going to do whatever it takes to create this vision of mine?
Yeah, it's funny as I was thinking about this when you were talking about not listening to our intuition, and I was like, I didn't even know what an intuition was. Like nothing was happening for me to listen to or ignore, right? Like I just was not
Mhm.
connected to myself in that way at that time. And I was very much, again, just not having an awareness about this, but I was totally like a victim about my stuff and my life. Like to me, for me at that time and the maturity level that I was at, that just gave me even more fuel to like complain about my situation, right? And feel stuck at my job, which in some ways, like you have a contract, you have to show up or else the cops come looking for you type thing with the military. But I wasn't even thinking about like, okay, well, what is an alternative and how do I create that? I was thinking about how can I get more status and how can I get more money? And so I started doing like pre-mat to go to med school and become a military doctor because of that health, trouble that I had been having and wanting to help other people feel good and heal. But it wasn't anywhere near to the extent where I was like, oh, I actually get to design my own life and this doesn't work for me, so let me choose something else. It was just like, oh, I'm stuck and I hate it here. Wah, wah, wah. And I did that for like about a year. About a year. And when I really decided it, because I'm so hard-headed and stubborn, it was because the military was like, hey, you can't stay here anymore. The military is like, all your health stuff is not getting better, so we think it's best if you don't serve anymore. And I was like, oh, okay.
Wow. How long did
um,
you serve for?
All right, guys, we'll get right back into the episode. I just wanted to take a quick break here to share with you guys that I do not make any money on this podcast. My goal and my purpose with Inherent Success is to be that guide for individuals in their self-discovery journey. So if you found any value in this episode, make sure to like, to subscribe. And if you know anyone that could benefit from the episode or the podcast overall, you can share with a friend as well. Now, let's get back into it.
9 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So that process from them kind of letting me know that's what was happening until my last day in service was about 8 months. And just before that happened, I found some support with my health and I started to feel really good. And I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, and if I get an opportunity to do it while I'm still in, then that's what I'll do as an entrepreneur. And it was in, the sales area and the home-based business area. And I was like, okay, maybe I can create a way to stay home with my kids with this and take care of us. And then I got that news that I'm getting kind of pushed out of the military, not pushed, the victimy, but like that relationship was going to end, right? And which was such a, blessing in disguise for so many reasons. Um, but that was the first time that I started to like really feel like something else was possible that I could pursue. And then because I was feeling so good, I got pregnant with my second son.
Yeah, let's do this again.
Yeah,
Come here.
right, exactly. So I was like, hey, at least I'll have I had some benefits having my babies at the hospital down there before, really kind of getting flung out into the world. But that's just what I needed at the time, and that is what set me on my personal development journey.
And was your ex-husband in the military as well?
No. So my kids, this is so fun. Mike, I can share this with you now because I've gotten to have a really beautiful conversation with my kids recently. And so this was not ever something that I would ever broadcast before. And now I can, and it's great. My kid's biological dad was not in the military. I was the breadwinner. And that is not so like when you and I talk and we talk on the phone, that is not who I'm referring to when I say their dad. There is someone else who has been a very wonderful friend in my life and a longtime companion since before I even met their biological dad. he and I met in the military. And so after my relationship with their biological father ended, he and I had kind of like a reunion and a reconciliation. They're dad now, and he ended up adopting my boys when my
Oh
oldest
my God.
was 3 years old, and he's been the most incredible co-parent ever, and he is family. Yeah.
Oh my God, that is so beautiful.
Yeah.
For him to just give that back to
Mhm.
you, like that is so powerful. Wow.
Yeah, to
I
my
didn't know
kids.
that.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that's so beautiful. That is so
yeah.
beautiful. Well, that's been a long time, but congratulations on that. That is
Thank you.
what a man. That's amazing. Oh, that's
Yeah.
so beautiful.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
so
when
blessed.
yeah. When you meet someone that can love your kids too, it's so amazing. It's so beautiful.
Mhm.
That's amazing. Wow, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean it's been such a cool part of the journey because I didn't know my dad growing up, and that was not something that I wanted to carry on to the next generation. Unfortunately, their
Yeah.
biological dad was just not in a place where he could really show up the way that they deserved. And, so this is something that we've been able to stop this here. This is something that has ended with us, and my kids know and love their dad, and it's awesome.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
You're changing the lineage, that's for sure.
exactly.
Yes, yes. So to kind of like go back about the amount of time that you served in the military, which by the way,
Yeah.
thank you for your service.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
Yes, of course. So what was coming up for you when you were just like you were still rolling in there and
Oh,
still just like was it like scarcity, was it like scared of losing that type of security as far as like always getting a paycheck, always getting the money that's always coming in? Was it more of like scarcity and security, like that fear of like lack of security? What was
mhm.
coming up for you throughout those years, and why you didn't make the decision to leave quickly?
I mean, on some level, yeah, there's a financial scarcity aspect to it, but really, I just didn't know. I really didn't know. I didn't have uh I wasn't like present to the fact that I didn't have anything else to do. It was just that was just the truth for me. That was the truth. That was facts. There wasn't anything else I was going to do. And so I think and on the inside, I really was just like, someone's coming to save me, or the circumstances are going to get better. And I just have to like wait for, I'm praying, I'm waiting on God. Like something is going to shift outside of me, you know? And we were setting up their bio dad at the time to go into the military. So then I'm like, okay, well, maybe once he's in and established, like that was just all I knew. And so that's all I was really like hoping and waiting for. And in the meantime, I was depressed, I was angry, I was bitter. I came home like pissed off about something every day. And not even that anger was wrong or necessarily misplaced, because there was a lot of like just small mindedness and pettiness. But because I was in it and engaging in it, I didn't realize that the reason why it was making me so uncomfortable was because I was meant for something else.
Hmm.
And so I
Yeah.
just, yeah, that's just where I was every day. And I was like, until, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reason why I ask is because most times people don't make a decision to change their lives. It's because of the
Yeah,
level of comfort
totally.
and the mindset of, oh, it might get better, or like instead of most this can be different in all different cases, but instead of like really looking within and seeing like, okay,
Hmm.
like why is this still going on, like why do I keep coming across the same lessons, why do I still feel the same way every year, why am I
Right.
unhappy? We point at everything else instead of
Totally.
ourselves.
Totally.
And Jim Ron says this, and I love this. He says the essence of life is growth,
Hmm.
and we are the only living species that don't really push ourselves to the max potential that we
Right.
obviously can. And this is what kind of like goes back to the purpose of inherent success, is because we have all these gifts. We're born with special gifts.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout the years, as we're getting older, it can get dimmed by like a person, a family member, or any type of circumstance. But we all have a special gift to become the best versions of ourselves and
Yeah.
to be the fullest expressions of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And people, most times, like, people just really stay in that comfort, and they're
Yeah.
like scared. I was there too. I was like, I've had this podcast idea for 2 years, and I was always afraid. 2 years. And I was
Yeah.
always afraid of launching it, because I was like, oh, like, what if people don't like it? Or like
Mm.
going for the things that I want to achieve, because I was just so like safe in my little bubble.
Yeah.
And I also have PTSD from launching my other business. That didn't go very well, but that's another story for another time. But
That's entrepreneurship, right?
yeah, but we get to go through these
Yeah.
moments in our lives, unless you're not doing the work, unless you don't realize it. But we get to go through these moments and grow from these moments, because it builds
Mhm.
character. It really does.
Yes.
So when you become like so self-aware, they're like, I don't have to stay here. I'm going to do
Mm-hmm.
something else. I get to be with my kids. I get to build something where I'm going to be home a lot every single day and spend time with my kids while I'm growing myself and while I'm growing my business.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is the majority of society today. It's just like, if you really knew how, like, what you have within, the special gifts that you have within, you can freaking conquer and achieve anything you want in life. That's what it ultimately
Exactly.
comes down to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so let's get into your coaching business. So after the military,
Yeah.
you started exploring. They basically kicked you out, which
Yeah.
is a blessing. It's a blessing. It's rigged in
Yeah.
your favor. So how did how were you able to cultivate like your coaching business and starting your entrepreneurship journey?
Listen, I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but my business is called Cultivate, so I love that.
It was on purpose.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah,
Let's
because that's
go.
I'm like, it's called Cultivate, so let's get into it.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Well, so it's been 8 years since I left the military. And in that time, oh my gosh, I went back to school. I was going to university full time with two babies. And I have this love for learning. I'm so passionate about it. And while I was doing that, I was also building home-based businesses and having some funds come in on the side. And I really fell in love with the process of sales. And so I have to tell you this, like, I won't tell you everything about this 8 years, but 8 years is key, because even starting to, release my need for external validation and start to understand that, like, oh, if I have this desire, then it's a worthy pursuit. It still took this long for me to launch a coaching business, right? Like,
Hmm.
and so, and for multiple reasons and factors and circumstances. Um, but through all of that, through really having the space to explore and learn myself and figure out what I want to do, and connect with other people who are building businesses and are obviously in the personal growth space, and start to train my self-talk and learn about the power of positivity and this one blip that we get to live a life. That's all of the things that started to really just unfold and unpack for me in beautiful ways. And the biggest one was relationships, like learning relationships, which I learned that before I learned about relationships, I was really bad at relationships. And that is why I was sad and depressed and angry and bitter most of the time. And well, geez, now that I've just listened to myself tell you my story and moving around as much as I did and trying to figure out where I fit in, No wonder I was bad at relationships. And this was like pre MySpace and Facebook, right? Like we had to buy like phone cards. You remember like phone cards to call internationally and stuff? Yeah,
Yeah,
that
I
was,
remember that. My grandma she bought that a lot. Yeah.
yeah, that's hard to keep up with people when you're 10,
Now there's
11,
like
12
WhatsApp.
years old. Yeah, now you can just WhatsApp anybody, which is wild. I probably would have
Yeah.
been really popular if I had WhatsApp. But no. So yeah, so this has been a journey, and through that and really becoming intentional with me and my life and my relationship with myself, I became really intentional with my relationship with my kids and with parenting, because that actually is something that is part of my identity and who I am. And there are so many things that I want to set them up for in success, not just to be effective and have resources, but to truly be happy and create their own joy and their own peace. And those are the tools that I've been collecting along this last 8 years, and sharing with them and sharing with, my friends and my loved ones and people that I know and their kids. And I kept getting the feedback consistently over and over. And I had done some sales coaching and some sales training and some fitness coaching. When I went back to school, it was for ex-phys and nutrition, which really was the biggest thing to me, recovering my health. But yeah, so I done a little bit of that, and really continued to practice getting curious and seeing things from different perspectives, and the power of being neutral just in relating to my kids and putting myself in their shoes, and the difference that has made. And I want to support other families and being able to change their cycles, their generational cycles, their lineage, be intentional about where their family is going, and create, a new possibility there, several new possibilities there, and really heal, and if kids are not the best freaking mirrors for all of your wounds, I don't know what
Mm,
is. Like the way that they have taught me, the way that they've shown up has given me an opportunity to like be my own best mom in a lot of situations, has been such a gift. And I just really love that Cultivate gets to help other people uncover that in their relationships with their families. Because like the number one thing for me, I didn't know. Like I just said that a lot. I don't know. I didn't know. I didn't know what was available to me. I didn't know what my gifts were. I didn't know what my power was. And if every young person can walk this life that they have, this short little life they have, truly understanding and feeling their worth and what's possible, and that they have a future and that they matter. Imagine the world that we could live in.
100%. That's so beautiful. It's so true. Um, our children is the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I love how you said that your kids bring the best out of you
Yeah.
and they
The
challenge
worst
you.
first and then the
The
best.
wor yeah, the worst first and then the best.
Yeah.
And, since I've been in this program too, I've been learning how to have a little, more effective conversations with my son. Right? My son's a teenager, so it's a little different.
Yeah.
So we've always had great conversations, but there were a lot of times where he just gets the best, like, he just gets some things out of me. And it's totally normal. But at the end of the day, especially when they're at that age, they deserve to be respected and honored too.
Yes.
So that's
Yeah.
something that I am constantly learning now with him, and having healthy conversations and talking about our goals and our dreams, and like
Mhm.
always pushing him. Not I don't expect things from him. That's something that I've recently transitioned.
Mhm.
Just not having expectations and not
Mhm.
making him feel like he has to get good grades, or if not, he's not smart. Like I
Right.
always teach him, like I always teach him that there's a lesson in everything in his
Mhm.
life, with school and like just anything, with friendships, just anything that comes his way. So I agree with that 100%. And
Yeah.
what would be your advice? And I guess you can share your experience
Mhm.
being a mother and starting a business.
Ooh,
How has that been for you?
gosh. I'll go back to like some old days with that because this has been a walk in the park, honestly, because we've been here many times before, right? That's the journey of
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurship. We're always launching something else, and when I first started and I was working very part-time on business endeavors, um, it was really hard to figure out what the priorities were, right? Because the goal is to be present. That was my goal. My goal was to be present. And then here I am working on this thing to try to make more money that has me not being present at all. And so how do I juggle that and create a balance? And one of the things, there's a couple of things that really supported me. One of the big ones is there's no such thing as balance, just like there's no such thing as perfect, right? There's harmony. So a mentor taught me this. If you think of like a choir, you have your altos, your sopranos, and the people in between, right? They're not all gonna scream or belt out notes at once. That's not how we make music. Sometimes it's the alto's turn. Sometimes it's the soprano's turn. And so letting yourself be in that dance with life and accept the harmonizing of it and be the conductor and like grab that seat and know that some things are going to go on the back burner for a while and commit to yourself to bringing them to the front when they need to, you'll be golden. The other thing is team. And this is something that I teach and that I get to continue teaching to families that I support is my home functions like a team. Like we are, whatever you want to pick, your favorite sports team, the Olympics, we're a team. And every team member has a role, but mainly they all share the same goal. And so what I started doing when my kids were very early is, part of that harmonizing was I would be in a sprint season, like I'm a sprint season in my business right now. And I get to break that down, what that means to them, what it's going to look like for them in their own terms. That means at the time, dad is going to tuck you in and read to you for this many weeks, right? That means this is what I am going to expect when you come through the door. X, Y, and Z is done before I ask you to. And we get to have a shared goal. So one of my favorite sprints that I did at the end of that 6 months was I got to take them on this awesome trip to Disney World, and that's what I was working for. And so they had next to my vision board, their vision board. And so every time they wanted to come in the room and interrupt me on
I
a phone
love that.
call, it was like, hey, this is the Disney call. You got to go, hang out for a few minutes. And they would take off and get them enrolled in the vision. My vision is that I'm in my house now, but we didn't have this house 2 years ago. My vision is for us to buy a house. Would you love to have a backyard? Like they're co-creating our life with me. They have to live it with me. Why shouldn't they get a say? You know?
Mm, I
So
love that.
yeah.
I love how you said that you play team. It's
Mm-hmm.
all about a teamwork.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I asked is because a lot of parents, and I've heard this from, parents and mothers that, they are so focused. Either one, they're so into being a mother that they put
Mm-hmm.
themselves last. So meaning
Totally.
they put their dreams last, they themselves last, they're not working out, all these things because there's the story is I'm a mom and that's my life. And it's
Yeah.
like, yes, you're a mother, but you're also a sister, you're also a wife, you're also a woman,
Yeah.
why like I had this conversation with someone a while ago, like when was the last time you felt sexy? When was the last time you like put on, like when was the last time you like
Yeah.
danced and like felt good? Because
Yeah.
she has a 3-year old and then she has a 1-year old. So she is just her life is being a mom and she's like, I just want to be a mom. And I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, but what about you? Like, how do you feel? So that's one. And then two, a lot of, most excuses I feel because I've worked with clients too,
Mm-hmm.
as far as like, with their fitness goals and also with teams where they get to build their brand and their business. And
Yeah.
they put their excuse of not starting their creating their vision because they're a mother. And this is a very sensitive topic because at the end of the day, you get to work together collectively, of course, and as a team, and you're making the sacrifice, you're working for yourself. That way you're building an amazing future and a healthy family dynamic where you don't have to ever worry about money ever again.
Yeah.
Like you get to just build that environment for your family. So
Mhm.
for me, like with my son, even in the past, I've had to make a lot of sacrifices with like him, dropping him off with my mom. If I had to go to a
Mhm.
business meeting, had to go see a client, or I would bring him with me.
Yeah.
And it's just like about making it work and not putting yourself last, because if you have dreams and you have goals, my, for example, in my family, my mother, and I love my mother and I love my dad. Now I'm building that relationship with them. But
Mhm.
a lot of the times, my mom would say, I chose to be a mother before taking care of myself. And that's
Mm.
sad, because my mom is actually very smart. My mom is actually like very outgoing. So imagine what she would have been able to create in her life, and not put her children as an excuse. So
Right.
it's 100% possible 100% of the time, build
Yeah.
starting a business as a parent, as a mother, as long
Mhm.
as you have that conversation with him, with
Yeah.
them. So with my son too, I love that, because I've had that conversation with him multiple times, like, hey, this, I have to work, like I'm going to be doing this at this time, like
Mhm.
it may need some of my time throughout the week. And he's like, Mom, I understand, I know you work a lot and I know you're doing it for us.
Yeah.
So when you have that communication with them, it's just like, and you make it fun, and like you share your
Yes.
goals and your dreams, it's like
Yes.
it's very, very, it becomes very fun. And it just
Yeah.
comes down to making that that short-term sacrifice for a little bit, that temporary sacrifice for a long-term result, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. And the thing that like drove me really during all of the forks in the road and being the mom and them mirroring me was I don't want my kids to be afraid. And I can't tell them what courage is, but I can show them what it looks like.
Mm,
So I've got to take those chances and I've got to put myself out there because I'm the example, you know?
100%.
Yeah.
It's parenting becomes like duplicatable. So like
Yeah.
they do whatever you do.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
son now, I love it, because in the mornings I don't listen to music at all. He thought it was weird for a while, and then he got on the train. Um, but I don't really listen to music unless like I'm at the gym.
Hmm.
And in the mornings, I'll play like Jim Ron. I always play something motivational in the morning. I
Yeah.
put it on my phone. I'm making breakfast. We're having breakfast. And then he started doing it too. So I would hear him in his room and he's like playing like a
Yes.
motivational video. And I'm like, I love it.
My kid would take his toy phone and pretend he was on a discovery call.
Oh, I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. That is so awesome. You are the example. You set the
Mhm.
example, and you create that space for them. You get to create the space for them. So I love that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So Candice, what is your ultimate vision with your coaching? Like, what is the end
Mm.
goal? Not
You
necessarily
know,
end goal, but like,
mhm.
what is because there's never an end goal. There's always room for growth, and there's
Yeah.
levels to everything. So what is your vision with your coaching?
Well, oh gosh, there's so much. Like I can see so much already, which is so exciting. And this gets to be just beautiful and intimate in the most truly life-changing ways, like literally changing lives. And so I shared that before, like that young people get to know that they matter. They get to experience that safety to explore who they are, whether they have a home, whether they don't have a home, whether they have parents that like honor their individuality or not. And so any way that I can support with that is what I'm down for. And so when I am working with a family, that's the hope that I get to create that for them. And I also get to create peace with parents to release some of the pressure and just know that like they care enough to do a great job at parenting and the rest of it is actually enjoying who your child is. And like that's
Mm,
fun, right? And then the other side of that, which I got to experience recently, which was so cool, was that I committed to 10% of my revenue going to local organizations that support youth. And there's the first donation went to an organization called Connections here, which they do family services, but they also have an in-residence foster care facility because we have such a need here. And they also have a transitional living campus for youth who age out of the foster care system. And so I got to make a donation to them a couple weeks ago. That was just, that lit up my entire world. I've never been more excited about something like
So
that. And so,
beautiful.
yeah, I get to just keep allowing that to happen. And the hope is that families continue to trust and commit to the process that we create and help me make an even bigger impact in that way. So, yeah.
That's so beautiful. What you're doing is so amazing and it's so powerful. And you really are making an impact, Candice.
Thank
And
you.
I knew this interview was just going to be mind blowing and so beautiful because your words are beautiful and just like what you're doing
Oh,
is so amazing. I'm so proud of you and I can't wait to witness all of that come true and even more.
oh, thank you so
Yes.
much, Emma. And same to you. I know that you've already had phenomenal guests on this podcast,
Thank
and
you.
all of their stories are so inspiring. And so, like you and I know, if we had a cast like this in our dark days, where could we be? So I'm so, so, so excited for you.
Thank you. Thank you. The
Mm-hmm.
our of course our life mission is to if we can just inspire just one person at a time,
Mm-hmm.
making an impact, we're doing our jobs.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Candice, thank you so much for being on the show today. Your story is just so beautiful. What you're creating is beautiful as well. And I have one more question for you. This is something that I love
Yes.
to ask to close
Okay.
it out.
Okay.
So, what does inherent success mean to you?
Ooh. When I hear inherent success, I think about like the inevitability because you just can't run from who you are. And I think we really talked about that on this in this conversation. It's like these things will come in your life and make you really uncomfortable until you just finally pull the trigger and get to your purpose. And so that's what inherent success means to me.
Gosh,
Yeah.
that was so good. Like mic drop. I wish I had like a little mic drop emoji. That was so good. Oh my God. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Candice.
Yeah, of
Yes,
course.
yes.
I love
Well,
that question.
yes. Well, once again, thank you so much for being on the show, guys. And if you found any value in this episode, or if you would love to share this with a friend, make sure that you do share this and also like, subscribe. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching and listening, and stay tuned for the next episode.
Yay, thank you.